Everybody, Mick here. I saw Rich Strike's win in the Kentucky Derby. I was visiting my family and friends. They all think I'm a little crazy with the, the horses, but actually everybody got excited and was interested to see this winner who at 80-1 really upset the nation and has drawn a lot of interest. And watching that race, it came back to me something that happened 51 years ago, 1971. The Kentucky Derby winner was a horse named Canonero II. Now, I learned a valuable lesson doing an autopsy of that race. I went to my father, who was training me. I was only 17 years old, and I told him, I said, how did this horse win the race? I looked at his record, and it was so poor. And the first thing he told me was, he says, well, you didn't study him. You dismissed him. You were against the horse to begin with. You didn't think he had a chance because he's from Venezuela, and his record in California was not so hot. But he said any horse has a chance. Every horse in a race has a chance, and you have to analyze each horse. And he said that a 3-year-old is an amazing thing because they're maturing. They're going from 2 to 3, and they can mature at a very rapid pace. And that's the case with Canonero II. He had won a race down in Argentina at 1 1/8 and 1 1/4, and he all of a sudden became a super horse on his way up to the United States. That was a valuable lesson for me back in that day. To say that Canonero was a long shot is understating things. He was born with a crooked leg. His foreleg was very crooked. His owners thought they'd never race him, so they took him to Keeneland, where he sold for $1,200 to an interest out of Venezuela. He went down to Venezuela and apparently won his maiden down there for a $3,000 purse. They took him to California, where he ran 3rd in an allowance race at Del Mar and then 5th in the Futurity, and then they brought him back to Venezuela, where he had a decent but not a perfect record, maybe 50% wins. And 2 of his races were at a longer distance, and that inspired his owners to bring him up to the United States. Now, the trip up to the United States was pretty tortuous. Apparently his airplane had to take off and land twice because of mechanical problems before he ever got to Miami. Finally, when he arrived in Miami, it was very hot and he was quarantined, and it sounds like a really horrible trip before he was vanned over to Kentucky. And his connections were both from Venezuela, so they didn't speak English, and there were no translators at Churchill Downs to help him get settled. But settled he got, and the results were he won the Kentucky Derby, coming from 18th place, swooping to the finish line and winning pretty easily over a good field. Jim French was a very good horse, Eastern Fleet, several very good horses in that race. So Canonero actually only paid a little less than $20 to win, but there was a reason for that. He was part of a 6-horse field. The tote could only handle 12 horses. There were a lot of couplings, and 6 horses were added into what they call the field. So if you bet on one, you get all 6. The other 5 horses ran 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, and 20th that day. So whoever picked the field did a very good job with 5 out of the 6 horses, but he overlooked Canonero's chances that day. After the Derby, a lot of people were mumbling that it was a fluke. He just was lucky that day, and that he would never win the Preakness. And I didn't think he would win the Preakness, not for those reasons, but because the Preakness is got a 1/16 of a mile shorter, and it's on very tight turns, which favors front-running horses, and his style consistently had been to come from behind. Well, his trainer must have known that too, because his trainer Juan Arias and got him ready to go to the Preakness with some speed. And a horse who's improved a lot can do a lot of amazing things. So when they broke for the Preakness, he shot out for the lead with Eastern Fleet, who I liked. And Eastern Fleet and him raced head-to-head, dueling for the entire race, and he wound up beating Eastern Fleet, and Eastern Fleet ran second that day. So all those people out there who think Rich Strike has no chance, consider the Canonero. After the Preakness, Canonero went to New York to go to the Belmont, and apparently he drew a big crowd of people from Venezuela. Something like 25,000 people were estimated to be there from the Venezuelan community of New York City, and 82,000 people attended in total. And unfortunately, he had a hock injury, a skin rash, and some other thrush, I guess is what it was called. And he did not run his best race that day, so he wound up finishing fourth. And after that, he was sold to a different interest. But the following year, he did come back and ran second in the Carter, I believe, and he won the Stymie, beating the great Riva Ridge. So he was a serious player, a serious horse who was an excellent horse, and he reminds me a lot of Rich Strike today. So the major lessons that I learned from Canonero, which I hope some of you younger people learn as well, is that a horse who, a 3-year-old who all of a sudden improves tremendously, might just be a really good horse. Might not be a fluke at all, might not be a pace meltdown. He may be an excellent horse. Never dismiss any horse in the race. Don't go in prejudiced like me and thinking a Venezuelan horse can't win. Every horse in a race is entered for a reason. Maybe he's not entered to win, but he's there for a reason, and he has a chance. Third valuable lesson is conditioning. The trainer really surprised me, taking a horse who always ran as a late kicker and turning him into a early sprinter. So a good trainer is worth his weight in gold. Thank you. And lastly, I'd like to say that I'm operating on a 51-year-old memory, which is not always 100% accurate, and information that I got from the internet, which is about as accurate as my memory. So if there's any details that I got wrong, well, I apologize for that, but I enjoyed talking about my memories of Canonero.